All right, welcome to the Empower Network TV, and you are listening or watching to the Great Sex Micro Summit. So we're going to be hosting this event today, and Lorna, welcome here. Shelley, welcome here. Mariah, welcome here. These three brave souls are going to beautifully, articulately, and in a very interesting way, give their thoughts on this wonderful topic that affects all of us, but sometimes we feel ashamed or afraid to talk about this. And so we're going to do our best to represent this topic and have discussions that need to be had that are often not had. I know my father didn't even give me a sex talk, and my younger brother, when he was coming up, the sex talk of my brother, he said, "You see that thing in your pants? Yep, keep it there too, married." That was a sex talk. Wow. So today we're going to go into wherever you ladies would like to go. So first, let's do welcomes. And then Lorna, let's start with you. Can you give us a minute or two of who you are, what you do, and maybe why this topic is important to your heart?
Sure, happy to. And yeah, it's great to be here with you, Mariah and Shelley and Amos, as we bring our collective wisdom, experience, and knowledge and aspirations around this topic, around sexuality and sex, into our world. For me, growing up in a religious home, a similar thing, save yourself for marriage. So that was very much, that message was caught and taught very thoroughly. And so growing up, I much, really disconnected from my sexuality until my midlife sexual awakening, where I just realized I need to start to reconnect to my own sexuality. And that led me on a journey, having left the teaching profession and teaching energy wellness, to a body of erotic work, which was sexological body work. And for me, that was just this amazing transformational, my midlife sexual awakening happened in there. And then I began to teach. So as a somatic sex educator, that's one of my great joys, is supporting people who have come through a similar path, perhaps, than I have, unique, obviously, to each person, but to be able to reconnect to their sexuality, to really go beyond, as you say, Amos, the whole shame and the fear, all of those things that we bring around sexuality. And so for me, it's having reconnected to my sexuality and having a whole different 180-degree perspective and passion and awareness of sexuality. And so bringing that into the world.
Thank you, Lorna. And thank you for bringing the birds. Is that the birds in the background at your place? They're beautiful. They're beautiful. The birds are even chiming in on this one. So
that's right.
And we already saw Mariah's cat walk across the screen. So everyone's getting in on this today. Mariah, I thank you, Lorna, for sharing where you come from. Mariah, please, a couple of minutes on who you are, what you do, why this is important to you.
Oh, man. Okay. So I am Mariah Jean. I am a coach and consultant for spiritual entrepreneurs. And so to me, this topic is so beautiful and important because everything I do is just, I have such a passion for family and for having that solid, firm foundation so we can go live this beautiful, incredible life we're meant to live. And sexuality is so interwoven into all of it. It's so interwoven into, like, it's how we get here, right? It's the foundation of the home in which we grow up. And it is part of discovering how we get to create more amazing humans and know more of who we are in that. And so my background is, I also came from a religious upbringing. I grew up surrounded by what a lot of people today call purity culture. And it's somehow I managed to escape it. Somehow I managed to not internalize it. And I did my parents did so many great things. They also did so many horrifically wrong turns. And yet somehow they gave me enough education to be like, no, this is a natural part of it. It didn't hurt growing up in the country and having a lot of animals, right? Like, not gonna lie, guys, I learned what the actual stuff is from like reading about animal husbandry. And there's something really cool about that because it's so integrated with like just biology and how we're created. And it's not even specific to humans. There's a lot that's only specific to humans, but even that in and of itself, but we get to elevate it and we get to experience it in a spiritual way that is not available to every other species that engages with it. So that's where I love to come at it and be like, what do we get? I mean, even the whole, like, you know, growing up in a religious background, there's a whole book in the Bible that is straight up erotica. Can we be real about that? Like, the Song of Songs is like, it is not inexplicit, like, it's not inexplicit. It goes deep into some real like acts if you're going to actually know what's what in there. And so I'm like, if we have a God who created this amazing gift for us, like, I want to know everything he gave for us. And so I'm just super grateful that I managed to come through unscathed. I am not unaware that a lot of people did not have that same experience. And so if you're watching this and you're someone who's like, you're one of those people who did not have a beautiful introduction to this, I hope we can just create a whole new thing for you today, just a whole new baseline, because this is an integral part of who you are, who you're created to be. And this is your birthright. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say, this is your birthright to have healthy sexuality in your life. And so I have made an absolute, I'm on a passion to make this, I have a passion to make this normal in our culture, healthy sexuality. So it's like completely break the taboos, to have it so aware of like, no, this is who we get to be, how we get to show up. And it's a connection in our intimate relationships that literally mirrors our connection with the divine. And so we need to allow space for that. And as such, that requires a lot of intention and protection and stewardship of that space. So I have complete reverence for the sacred nature of it. And at the same time, I embarrass my daughters on the regular because I'm so sex positive and they're just going to have to get used to it. So anyway, that's a little bit about where I've been, why I'm so passionate about it, and why I'm grateful to be having this discussion with you guys here today. You're muted, Amos.
Thank you, Mariah. I'm sex positive. That is, I've never heard that term before. Thank you for sharing where you're at. Shelley, your cat walked across the screen here, just like on cue. Everyone's getting in. So Shelley, who are you? What do you do in the world? Why is this topic important to you? Please.
Thank you. Yeah, and you know, the birds are in on it. We're just missing the bees now. So I am a mom, and I'm a special needs mom. And I basically started a care company that helps exhausted special needs parents who need a break, so they can maybe have a date night. Maybe they can like have some time together. Maybe they can glue each other together with sex. So I literally, through my work with supporting children, enable parents to, you know, have this part of their life, or at least that's my hope, even though that's not what I advertise it as. And then, but in order to support that business, I became a digital marketer. So I actually help people package up their superpowers and help them come online and learn how to help other people with their superpowers. So that's what I do. And why this is important to me is, just like each person here, I didn't come from a religious background, but I consider myself you know, connected to spirituality, and everybody has a different framework for that. But I really sort of see it as logistics. It's energy management, it's autonomy of self, it's personal development. And I kind of operate kind of on sort of the premises that, you know, sex is more about what's between your ears than between your legs. Life happens for us and not to us. And we all do the best we can with what we got. And we're here on our own personal journeys. And if we can learn from, you know, to fulfill our purpose and self-actualize, that sex is just a natural part of that.
You do it again. Thank you, Shelley, for sharing, and thank you for being here. Okay, Lorna, let's just jump into the deep end of manifesting, because sex is clearly tied to our creative power. So let's go there, because I know for me, they are tied together. The times that I feel the most creative, I feel the most alive, I feel the most wired. The times I have felt the most depressed, it's like sex is like, it's like there's no drive. What's going on here when we're feeling arousal? We have a bunch of entrepreneurs that are in this group. So how can that be channeled? What are your thoughts on that, please?
Great question and great prompt. certainly that aspect of the creativity, that creative aspect of who we are, both human-wise and from a spiritual perspective. And as Mariah mentioned, this whole aspect of we come through into this human experience through sex, and that's that portal back to spirituality. And as we tap into that aspect of our creative aspect, the mere thing, I think there's with entrepreneurs, there's always that aspect of wanting to get our message out. And if we look at the mere aspect of things from a feminine perspective or a masculine, there's the genitals and our throat and our mouth, they mirror each other. So as we reconnect to our sexuality, we actually in many ways are reconnecting to our voice to be able to bring our message forward. And I think that as we allow that arousal to happen, it allows that whole erotic energy to be alive. And oftentimes when we think about sex, and I know Shelley and I were talking about this a couple of days ago, when we think about great sex, well, what is sex? Let's go back to what is sex. We can talk about it as a physical act. We can talk about it as the sex based on what genitals are between our legs. And yet there's so much more to it. There's this aspect of connection, relationship. There's this seeking outside of ourselves. There's this trying to know ourselves, trying to come back home to ourselves, if you will. And we can allow for that erotic energy to be there, aside from any connection to anyone outside of ourselves, but to really allow it to be expressed and experienced within ourselves. That taps into that whole creative life force energy. And the quote of Audre Lorde is, we tend to think of the erotic as a quick, tantalizing sexual arousal. She said, I think, and I speak of the erotic as that deep life force energy that moves us in a fundamental way. And when we can connect into that erotic energy, and it's not about going for orgasm. There's so much talk about having an orgasm, and they're wonderful. And when we can allow that erotic energy to build, not just in the genitals, but in the whole body, all of a sudden there's this aliveness that fuels us, that creates clarity, that creates that creativity. And when we can tap into that, it's an amazing way to use it for our life purpose, for our clarity in our life, in our world, just in our joy. Personal erotic practice, it's when we think about the word masturbation, there's this idea of touching genitals with the intent to have release, whether it's for the pleasure or quick because I'm feeling tense. I need to have that release. And I think I use the word personal erotic practice, and I shorten it to the beautiful acronym of PEP, add some pep to your day. And when we can allow that personal erotic practice, whether it's whatever it is, it's a sensory thing, be able to connect to our senses, feeling the wind on our neck or our face, biting into that juicy apple. We can do that. All of those can be sexual erotic parts that connect into our body, and this body is this vessel for creativity. So the more that we can connect into our senses in this present moment, then we can really allow that creative energy to flow. Even one of the things that I have people do in my practice with them when they're doing their PEP, I say, take a journal with you, and you might go in with a question. You might want to go, what's my next step for my business? There's a question that's arising about my relationship, and go in and do your self-pleasuring, whether it's touching your genitals, whether it's breathing, using breath, sound, and movement. And then when insight comes, just jot it down and come back into the practice. So using this whole aspect of our sexuality, our erotic energy, our erotic essence to really fuel all aspects of our life.
Wow. It makes sense what you're saying. And so we're not compartmentalized. Mariah, let's go right to you. Like, same question. Where do you go with that? What she said? What are your thoughts with what Lorna said there? Please.
So yeah, I resonate with a lot of, I feel like the way what I was thinking of how I was thinking of how I was going to answer your question. To me, it's very much more about the connection, right? Like if you're going to have healthy sexual energy, like the highest vibration of sexual energy, right? Not just a physical manifestation, but you're going to engage your soul, you're going to engage your spirit, you're going to operate that highest frequency within it. It always comes back to connection, right? And healthy connection. And so to me, to answer your question, Amos, it's about, there is something about that energy that is about connection with others, but it connects us to something in ourselves, right? It connects us to something, and like we feel most ourselves in that place because we're getting to step into that energy of, I get to create something from nothing right now. And I get to create something. And then this is very true in the entrepreneurial space. Many of the aspects Lorna is tapping into are very legitimate. I've had what I'm trying to remember how I phrased it. But something I call, like, again, because I work with a lot of, faith-based or recovering, deconstructing, but just really spiritual entrepreneurs who I'm just like, we're going to swipe away all of that. But just come back to something, and I call it the theology of, how did I put it? I think it's like sexual self-responsibility or something like that, of just stewarding yourself, right? If we can't steward ourselves, we really have no business bringing anything else to anyone else, especially in this kind of intimate space. So it's always about stewarding yourself first and owning your energy and cleaning your aura. Some people would say you could insert a whole bunch of different things there, but stewarding yourself first so you can bring it to others for that healthy connection. Right? Because how many of us know if you get in that space with funky energy, it's just going to go sideways fast. So stewarding and tending yourself first, because that also shows up in our work. It shows up in our energy. It shows up in our entrepreneurial output. It's just going to affect there. So, I mean, because entrepreneurs are very well aware that your personal self-development is always going to show up. It's always going to pour out there. It's always going to, what's the phrase? Guys, it's still early for me. I'm just going to be real. I'm still like stringing words together. Is a thing. What's the entrepreneurial thing about, like, business is the best self-development thing out there. We are all aware that our personal lives, ourselves, we almost are our businesses in a lot of ways. And so this is, to me, again, foundational to stewarding ourselves, to show up and serve people. And because family is such a huge thing for me, I'm like, you know what, how I steward family is going to be, and again, this is integral to family, right? How many of us remember our parental or, models, templates, caretakers? Like if their relational energy, sexual energy, their connection was off, it was going to affect the atmosphere. It's true for us. I use parenting just a lot when we show up to serve our people, because we are showing up from a greater place of maturity to help grow them up so they can then surpass us, go do greater things than we ever did. At least that's my hope for my girls. And so I draw on that parental, dynamic a lot when it comes to serving people. So I really believe it is absolutely, we need to tend ourselves. It is integral, this creative energy. And yeah, I'm absolutely, some of the practices that Lorna mentioned are very, very applicable, because this is creative energy. It is a place where it's like the divine it is a high vibration, but I am so big on stewarding it, to keep it with that beautiful, beautiful energy and not mixed with something that can turn icky fast. And so you have to know what that is for you. You have to know that, and you have to be in a space to go yes, no, be in charge of your yes and your no. And if that ever gets mixed, even in your own self, in your own practice, that's where you might want to ask yourself, hey, how can I even take a step back and steward this? Right. And that's where I'm bringing in a coach, bringing in someone who is like, hey, is this a healthy thought? Is this not a healthy thought? And I didn't even intend to go there, but I feel like it's super relevant for a lot of people. I feel like that's so necessary because not everyone has like a clean slate when it came to being introduced to this, right? It was mixed with a bunch of different stuff. So finding what is yours and what is other people's is super important, especially in this space, because you have a gift that needs to come out to serve people, to just be yourself in the world. And taking care of all these boundaries is huge when it comes to all of that, and honoring, dude, there's this sacred sexuality that is yours. So hopefully that answered somewhere in the neighborhood of where you're going with that, Amos, but there you have it.
Oh, thank you, Mariah Jean. No, I just wanted to hear your thoughts, and however you want to take it, take it. Shelley, saw you writing down some stuff, so I'm sure you have some thoughts. Shelley, I know you're going to say it in 5 seconds, then we're going to go on to Lorna. So just give us your 5 seconds. I'm just teasing.
Note to self, keep it short. Okay. You know, when I was talking about the creative power and the channeling of energy and how that shows up for entrepreneurs and leadership, I think that, you know, firstly, I use the kind of energy. It's more like energy management, right? So like what Lorna was talking about that, you know, I get as excited about my purpose on the planet as I do about sex, you know, or maybe it's vice versa. I don't know, but it's that energy that you're managing and bringing that, you know, it excites other people. And people sense that and respond to that. And so I think it becomes a really important key part of team management and leadership. Not that that's the topic of your team, you know, you ever brought up in your team, but it's important to engage that energy to inspire other people, I guess is what I'm sort of feeling. And, you know, it also, I really loved what Mariah said about the healthy stewardship. And, you know, I've had heard psychologists refer to it as like an internal locus of control, right? Because if you're busy thinking about what's going on in somebody else's bedroom or between their legs, you can take that as a clear flag that you're not in control of your own self. And here's why: because if you're clear and centered on who you are and what your purpose is and what you got a lot to manage for your own self. And if you're busy worrying about others, you're not paying attention to that. And also it lets other external influences essentially drive you. And that can lead to manipulation, that can lead to abuse, that can lead to bad places. And so if you don't steward yourself that way, you can get taken advantage of. I've had that happen. You can get twisted around. I've had that happen. Your self-esteem can go down the tube. I've had that happen. You know, and I come at it from a really kind of lived experience kind of perspective here, but also then dealing with the stigma and judgment, you know, separately from sex. You know, I had stigma and judgment with my son with special needs. You know, there's a lot of stigma and judgment around, why is your child melting down in the grocery store? Must be a bad parent. Why can't your kids sit in class? The education system, you must be a bad kid or bad parent. Problems at home. Couldn't possibly be the skill set of the school. So I kind of developed in other areas this bit about, you know, other people's opinions of me are their business, none of my business. And I think that applies to sex too. And, you know, I know for me, I'm a lifelong learner. I'm always developing. I can learn from my things, and my path and my purpose will take me where I need to go and what I need to learn. And I think that's where entrepreneurial stuff kicks in too, because you're constantly developing, constantly, you know, showing up. And when especially when you're running a team in a business, you know, the whole aspect of control and who's in charge of your sex, and you know, is it somebody else directing that or you? It's about, you know, your professional personal boundaries when you're dealing with business, and how much you share and how much you don't, and to who, when, and your mindfulness of other people's sensitivities, trauma informed practice. And frankly, also, I think it has to do with, in terms of entrepreneurship, a lot to do with the shift in the patriarchy towards feminine leadership. And Lorna and I talked a little about that. She has some really neat stuff to say about how, you know, when women center themselves and come into themselves and truly provide the flow and the energy and the excitement, that it actually balances out some of the negative male energy, the toxic male energy, and that there's actually a beautiful alignment between feminine and masculine energy, whatever your body is, you know, and how to balance that. So that wasn't 5 minutes or 3 seconds, but that's my thing.
It was great, Shelley. And two things you said that really, really struck me is the last thing you said. I know when I'm getting into rah, go get it done mode, as let's say male energy, which is super, works great for short spurts for getting stuff done. What balances me out is like the playful, light, nurturing stuff. It takes my energy that is causing stress up here, and it just makes me smile enough, and I just melt. I literally melt into like this perfect state of wholeness in like a minute. I'm like, holy shit, how did that happen so fast? So, and the second thing you said, I find it fascinating, and I wonder what you guys think of this, is it's like a barometer, maybe, or a thermometer. If I would throw this question out, if your purpose you're pursuing on the planet, you're not as excited about as when you are the most excited in sex, are you even on your purpose?
Right?
That's a good question to ask.
And Lorna does a better job of this, but I think that the male and female energy balance that you're talking about really is more productive in a sense, because it enacts like males serve, like they get stuff, I almost said a bad word, done, right? And so when you're in your productive flow, you're serving your purpose, but you're inspired by flow, and you're inspired by what we would call feminine energy. And that is a really beautiful thing that Lorna knows way more about than me.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Shelley. Thanks for that. So let's go to the next question, because I have a thought to throw at you all three. That's horrible grammar. Wow. I have a thought here. Lorna, let's go to you. So I want, if whatever you think, whether you agree or disagree, I just want your thoughts here. So I view sexuality as a ladder to the divine. And I I label it like, the first ladder is stuff like rungs I don't want to hang out on, like, pornography, fantasizing about things that aren't real. And then as it moves up, maybe it's like self-pleasuring or with a partner. And as Mariah was saying, you get higher up the rungs of like maybe committed sex in a loving environment. And then maybe you get to committed sex in a loving environment where you're both focused on manifesting something, maybe as you're doing the act, maybe as you're orgasming, maybe as you're just enjoying erotic, whatever. And somehow it opens up, it touches God at some point, it touches the divine. I'm curious about your thoughts on a progressive state of manifesting heaven on earth, or however you'd frame that.
Thank you for that question. In some ways, it seems to me that our human experience of sexuality is this unfolding experience where, and I say by design, where we feel separate often from our sexuality and separate from our divinity by nature, because when we come in through sex and we come in, we're taking everything in and things get labeled. In the midst of all of that, there's also this aspect of looking outside of ourselves and things being labeled and judged, so whether it's from a cultural, religious, wherever it is where shame gets in there. And so by design, our connection to that divinity gets disconnected and hidden and shamed through all of those different things of shame. And then at some point there is this, for some people it's in their childhood, for some people in their teens or later adulthood, whatever it happens, where there can be this aspect of tapping into this connection of the divine. And there's a lot of people that wouldn't even connect it, kind of like sex and spirituality. I don't get that. That doesn't register for me. And other people, it's just a real natural aspect of it. It's so, the uniqueness of that. So it's not a matter of, well, it's good and bad for you. If it's a good, if it's good for me, it's good for you type thing. It's kind of like everybody's on their own journey. But I think that there's this aspect of this awakening to, and even when we talk about orgasm, it's also called the little death. And that little death referring to, like, it's just this, there's no awareness of self. And And that to me mirrors that, as Mariah, Jean talked about, it mirrors that spiritual aspect of things where in our human experience, we go through this often the dark night of the soul, where that sense of identity is being cleared away. And so in our sexual experience, where we are in those moments of just, there's no words, we're just here in this moment, where it's connecting into this divine spiritual essence of who we are, and that what we experience in our human experience, as Mariah said as well, is it mirrors our spiritual experience. And so this journey to reconnect to there, sometimes it's through pleasure and sometimes it's through pain. And whatever it is, it's that awakening to that, being able to fully feel and experience what's happening here in this moment. To be looking outside of ourselves or some future thing, it's not there. It's what it is that brings us into this moment, into this physical felt experience that will take us up to those rungs of thinking and feeling we are this human being, into this connection to the divinity of who we are, that is without word, it is without label, and it can only be felt and in a sense of awareness. I'm just going to leave it there.
Wow. Thank you, Lorna. For those watching, she referenced little death. I think it's the Latin, or the Latin word means, orgasm means little death. And I think it's fascinating what you just said, because to reach orgasm, you have to let go. And how many other things in our life to reach that level, we have to let go of a bunch of stuff. We have to let go of, consciousness almost, to attain that divine place that we long to be as a parent, as a person, in our dreams, in our business. Thank you for hitting that. Mariah, where do you want to take that?
Oh my gosh, I had so many thoughts coming as Lorna was speaking. Coming from right? I know, I wish I had my pen and paper with me. I'm like kicking myself that I don't, because that'd make this so much easier to keep track of all these beautiful thoughts. But coming from a basis where it's like, I keep thinking about like those foundational truths. And many of us, as Lorna's talking, I kept thinking and reverting back to an account many of us are familiar with, is like an early Genesis account of creation, Adam and Eve. And there was this essence. If you guys did not know, I recently found this out and I am nerding out over this, but the word Eden literally means desire and pleasure. Like, for the creator to place us in a garden, literally like saturated with desire and pleasure and provision of every good thing, like that just, I'm here for it. Is all I'm gonna say there. But there's this thing of, there's a oneness, right? Like there's like, really, I think a lot of what we're referring to is like, it's getting back to that oneness, right? The masculine and the feminine. And you're right, Shelley, the masculine is so inspired by the feminine, right? There's a beautiful interchange there. And, when we got disconnected from that oneness, one of the first things God asked them was like, who told you were naked? Who told you were separate from this? Like, you're meant to be integrated in this way. You're meant to have this wholeness. And so it's kind of that self-consciousness that was never meant to be ours, right? And you're talking about this little death where we get to be completely removed from all of those illusions in a way, right? There's a freedom in that self-forgetfulness that we get to remember, like this is wholeness. This is our birthright. This is how we're meant to be. And I absolutely believe that is, again, that is a divine birthright. And, Jesus himself was like, hey, I just wish like everyone was one with God as I am one with God. Like that oneness could be known. And I think that's what, sexuality is a beautiful gift to be able to get back into that oneness. And I'm going to be real, guys. I'm very practical when it comes to, I can get all spiritual about it, but I'm very practical when it comes to like, if I'm going to enter that space, I want to make sure I don't got to worry about nothing. And now this is very real for a lot of females. I'm kind of like, Amos, thank you for bringing your male perspective. I'm like, man, I wish we had just, more men here just to represent, shall we say, because again, the masculine and the feminine, there's such a beautiful marriage there. but I'm really about like, there's something to me really cool about a lot of these ancient practices of like setting up the physical space to be conducive to sexual freedom, of like knowing that the financial is taken care of, knowing that the living arrangements are taken care of, knowing that like there is safety and accountability for even the fruit and the produce. Like there's a plan for the progeny that can come from this. There's a plan for that. There is that is all taken and set up. And so just to close with one kind of historical fact that I just nerded out over, guys, but in ancient Judaism, when they would have weddings, they were like week-long parties, right? So like the account where Jesus turned water into wine, like it was several days in of like they had been partying. Well, I recently discovered a few years back that like the marriage, part of celebrating this marriage and this coming together, there is a tent in the center of this party where the marriage is consummated. And if those of us who are aware of, just energy fields and quantum realities, imagine the protective shields, the protective, beautiful energy of being surrounded by people who are celebrating your sexuality, who are celebrating your freedom in that, who are setting the tone of like, you get so much freedom to run with this thing. And to me, I cannot imagine a more sex positive, just propellant in that. And to me, there are so many studies today that committed long-term marriages are where they report the greatest sexual satisfaction. And because in my definition, healthy marriage, right? We're going to be very real. Not our marriages are healthy. That is absolutely a place where not everyone gets, a glimpse into what that looks like. But healthy marriages, to me, it's like you have a lot of things going for you. There's partnership, there's, beautiful parenting, but like one of the things is it's meant to be your own private sex club. Like that is meant to be yours. And I just think there's something so cool about getting to experience that oneness in that place and that freedom. And so that's how I'm assimilating some of the amazing things Lorna is laying out here. And I'm not gonna lie, I enjoyed the topic immensely, just being real.
That's awesome. Great thoughts, Mariah. Thank you. Shelley, what are your thoughts on what's been going on? What's going on for you? Please.
Well, these two ladies are just like, so like, what can I add? Not much. I think, that bit about how we are not humans here having a spiritual experience, but a spiritual being here having a human experience is important because, and that's the full range of experience, right? It's your meat sack that you're walking around in. It's your like the interactions with people. It's what your soul is here to learn and what your soul is here to accomplish and do, right? So, for me, that shows up as like developmentally as a person, how sex is kind of, filled a hole, pun intended, but like in terms of like when you're developing and maybe you have childhood trauma around sex, maybe you have or it doesn't even have to be trauma around sex. It can be like Gen Xers, we were the latchkey kids, all our parents were breaking up and you lost your parents and you're looking for that family, you're looking for that love, you're looking for your place and your connection and your relationships. And it also has to do with, like your stress levels and how stress interrupts that flow between you and your private sex club partner. Right. So, it's psychology, and whether it has trauma involved or not, there's all these natural consequences. Like if you're just making decisions about what you want to try for sex. But I basically think that to get to the divine from here and to get to that, manifesting heaven on earth, we have to acknowledge ourselves. We have to dig in. It's our duty to dig in and, not distract off onto porn and not distract off onto blaming others or not distract on letting people, having other people control us. Because if we don't have that internal locus of control and focus, we can't be one with ourselves and connect to the divine. We can't be you're not going to be yourself, best self. You're not going to be the best person in your relationship. You're not going to show up for your business. You're not going to show up for your community, and you're not going to help the world rebalance from this divisive competing fighting place between the male and female energy, which is so unfortunate that we're having right now. And it's like men against women. And what is that? Because Lorna said something that the other day that her husband said to her, and first she got mad at, and then she realized sort of difference. And if you don't mind, Laura, I'm just going to share. She talked about her husband, said, well, you're like the fire and I'm like the rocks around you holding you in place. And at first she experienced that as control and got upset about that. But then later, Lorna, you said you had this sort of realization that it's more about like the wind going through a wind instrument, or a container, having something that's flow, or the energy passing through something. It's that female creative, beautiful, exciting energy is protected and focused and made usable, not usable in the sense of a negative connotation, but like functional, and fulfills its purpose in all of us when the male and female stuff are balanced. So I guess that's sort of what I wanted to say about that. That's all I have to say about that.
I like what you just shared. I like that, Lorna, your husband said that, because I can relate to that. As a man, you want to be steady, strong, you want to protect, you want to be bold and fierce, but on the negative side, you can also take a rock and smash someone's head. But you could be the protector, the shielder, and like how a fire is wonderful. It can warm and nurture, but without a protective thing to contain the fire, we're in Canada and the fires are burning our country down. So fire on its own, not contained, is not good. But fire contained and appropriately is beautiful. And I just love that you said that, because I've experienced that. The balancing, the way the two balance each other is brilliant. Thank you, Shelley. Lorna, where do you want to go? We're just gonna, as we close out here, just let you guys just take it wherever you want to take it.
Thank you. I would like to come back to, and as has been shared here by each one of us in our own way, the bringing up the aspect of children, and speaking of creativity, but that aspect of children and the naturalness of sexuality, and how can we create homes of harmony where our children get to be raised in homes where their sexuality, who they are, no matter what gender they connect to, how they want to express their sexuality, that it can be honored and really celebrated for this part of their wholeness. And I think for me, it really begins with that aspect of consent in my work. Consent and building that foundation is where I start with people. But in our homes, so many times, and I talk about consent is actually, it's a feeling, it's a felt experience, and talking about what feels true and aligned within. And when we can support our children to be able to really honor what they feel. And the example that I love to give is that of, and as a grandma, here I am, and I've had the opportunity to really put this into practice. When grandma's going, do you want to, give grandma a kiss? I don't want to, whether they're busy coloring or playing with Lego, or they just don't want to. We often then go into this place of, well, grandma's going to go. You don't know when she's going to be back. And so we, look at grandma, she looks sad. What happens if grandma dies before you see her again? So we shame them, we guilt them, we put all of this sense of being responsible for somebody else onto this little child. And so if we can, as children, as adults, really, number one, really trust those children to be able to, and honor what there is, what we're building in is that sense of awareness, that autonomy, that sovereignty, and them really knowing their boundaries, they're trusting. It's kind of ironic in that we do that in our homes, but we say, don't listen to strangers. We do all those things and we create this, well, I said no, and you didn't listen to me. So if we can, as much times as we can, honor our children, reinforce for them what they feel and believe in the moment. And that starts to create this place where they are now able to, when peers start to come around and this pressure, this group think starts to happen, it's kind of, they have that ability more and more to stand in their power and say, no, it doesn't feel right for me. It's not what I want to do. They're not seeking that, okay, if I want to be loved, if I want to fit in, I need to dishonor what's happening within me. And so to be able to really support our children in that. And what that does, it also gives us as adults that opportunity to come back home to that place within ourselves. Those times and places when we as children, when we as teens were not honored, whether it showed up as sexual abuse, whether it showed up as go give grandma a kiss, can we come back into, and in my work, it's absolutely showing that people come back in, give them those opportunities to re-engage, to feel that that's what it feels like. And from there, they can move in their worlds in whole different ways, being able to stand in their power, stand in their voice. And their boundaries are coming from the inside out. It's not this protective thing. It's this lived, this is who I am today. This is how I want to express and be. And this works today. This doesn't work today. And we come from this place within. And so for me, it's this opportunity to really, because that's where great sex happens, is from this place of authentic, real, this is what I want or don't want today. I can voice it, I can say it. But great sex is an inside job. And no matter what it looks like, however it's expressed, whoever it's expressed with or not anybody else, it's a lived experience. And that to me is this opportunity to really not even come home to ourselves, but to be home in ourselves. That divine essence, our human experience, it's right here, right now.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you, Lorna. As we wrap, Mariah, where would you like to?
Well, Lorna, thank you so much for that, because there was so much there and just so much beautiful prompts. I had to start making notes because I couldn't not. But this emphasis on autonomy, especially bodily autonomy and sovereignty, is essential, because this is, again, our bodies are home for our soul, for our spirit in this experience. And our bodies are so much more. They are the most complex and beautifully intricate, machine, shall we say, in all of creation. Like we haven't even fully tapped into that. And so having even just, there's so many directions to go with that, but having this awareness, this bodily awareness of and energy management, I'm so big on that, as Shelley brought up. But there is such a place of keeping space for that responsible sexual self-care, of you're responsible for yourself. You're responsible to steward yourself and to know yourself is a huge thing. And in that, there can be a beautiful space for that, but we find we kind of do need otherness. That's the whole point of this drive, is to bring together the beauty of otherness and the beauty of differences and the masculine and the feminine and the gift that brings. And yet at the same time, as Lorna brought up, it often drives us into places where we find, oh, wait, I'm not always healthy in this place. And a lot of, whoever I'm engaging with may not be healthy. And I personally don't enjoy going there, but we really can't do this subject justice without recognizing that is a reality that we do have to deal with. And Lorna brought up some of the very real foundations of where that starts, right? And then we have seen, and in my experience, we have seen a lot of manifestations of where it can end up. And coming out of the backgrounds there's a documentary that was released this week called Shiny Happy People. And that is only one step removed, only like a half step removed from the culture with which I grew up. And we see a practical manifestation of what happens when you do not have a healthy concept of this. You do not have healthy application. You do not have bodily autonomy. You have the right to say to your body that no one else has a right to your body, that this is yours. And there is where you are outsourcing yourself, and there's just the boundaries just get messy. And this thing is like, as much as I am a proponent for what a lot of people would call like traditional stuff, traditional setup, just because I have experienced some of the beauty of this in marriage, and I've experienced the protection that provides and the freedom that provides, there are a massive amount of people who also have come through what was the recipe for it. And they come out and they realize, well, this was a hot mess. What the heck? This did not promise what I was given. Did not deliver on it. And there's a man on TikTok, beautifully done. He just has come out and he's kind of woken up and he's like, when I was a young, faith-filled, husband, I recognized that really I was just masturbating with someone else's body. I did not know how to honor my wife. I did not know how to show up. I did not know how to have real connection and honor in this space. And so we have to recognize that a lot of us have come through that, and we have to completely divorce ourselves from that lower infiltrated energy. That is not our birthright. That is not what we're intended to have here. And so that just has to be honored, right? If anyone's ever done tapping, if you guys are familiar with, you have to validate the unpleasant emotions, feelings that are moving through the body. You have to witness them. You have to acknowledge them. You have to give them space so that you can make way for the new. And my heart is to make way for the new in such a way that that container that you guys brought up is mutual. And I have to, if I can share my perspective as I heard it, Amos, as you brought up the masculine, the feminine, the beauty of that, and Shelley just recognizing bringing up the topic that Lorna so vulnerably opened up of like, the masculine does love to provide a container for the woman's wild passion and her energy, right? Just so she can go crazy, she can go nuts. And he's there to make sure that fire stays in the fire pit and everyone's like good and warm and protected. And at the same time, it reminded me of like, I feel like that's the masculine's almost like reflection back and gratitude that I feel like a woman provides that for him. In his moment of passion and just being so full of this energy, she provides that container for him in that moment. And there's such a beauty in that. And I think just honoring that gift is just something, because there is, to me, it is just undeniable that this is a portal from heaven to earth. It is literally the portal by which souls enter the earth, and to diminish it to anything less than that, I just can't partner with. And so this is why I'm so grateful for this conversation, because I'm like, we get to take this back. We get to take back our sovereignty and our autonomy in this way. And so I'm just grateful for every perspective shared here, and for the gift of we get to just go be more empowered people, letting this energy do its work in us. And we get to have the divine just more inhabited in our beings. And then we get to share it with one another in those sacred spaces. And so thanks so much for bringing this up.
Wow. Thank you, Mariah. Shelley, please, what are your final thoughts here? Where would you like to go?
I think these ladies and you definitely have shown that sex is powerful. And it, I think the last thing I'd like to say is just that having leadership of self, but showing leadership to others is about standing in your own power. And, when you move from the fear, of stigma, offending, being controlled, experiencing pain, to realizing your potential. And a lot of times we're afraid to realize our own potential, like we're afraid of our success, and but wanting to move towards that truth and fulfillment and soul's purpose and mindfulness and personal development and soul development, so you can leave the most permanent kind of legacy in the universe as your spirit development. That I think that I've really enjoyed, and it's not lost on me that we're doing this in the Empower Network TV, right? And that the leadership of the amazing people and of you, Amos, to create this forum to talk about these topics and how we bring to bear our personal superpowers, and how we bring to bear the changes that we want to see in the world, and rebalancing things and making things better and helping each other and lifting each other up. Yeah, I mean, we may not call it sexy, but it's definitely hot. So thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. And well put. What people are watching today is exactly that. Male energy has orchestrated something so that female energy can bring creativity and fire and passion within a container. And it's reversed too. It's like you said, Mariah, it's both, but this is exactly what happens probably in so much of our lives. Are we even aware of it? I don't know that I'm even aware of 10% of it. I just want to say, first of all, thank you, Lorna, for being here. Thank you, Shelley, for being here. Thank you, Mariah, for being here. If you want to close out to each other before we wrap up,
Thank you.
please.
Oh yeah, I just have so much gratitude for you ladies and bringing your perspectives. It's been a true honor and gift.
Mhm. Yeah, likewise, to be able to be here and bring our voices together as one, and yeah, really beautiful. Thank you.
And I love the inclusion and tolerance and respect, compassion, care, and respect. That is the culture here. And you both are beautiful, beautiful. And Amos, thank you for the opportunity.
This was a scary topic for me to suggest. I told all of you that.
It could have gone a lot of ways, Amos, but it didn't.
Yeah, but I felt we were supposed to do this. Others expressed concerns that would this degrade the purity of what we're doing here. And I felt I felt it will honor a very important part, as you three have succinctly stated. We came here through sex. Like, that is all that has to be said. This is how we came here, no pun intended. So we have to get more curious about this topic. If you have been watching the Empower Network TV today, you've been listening and very likely blessed by Lorna, by Shelley, by Mariah. Please reach out to them. I'll be tagging them in this. Thank you for being, the three of you, thank you for being here today. For those of you that have taken, there's a bunch of comments, have taken the time to comment or watch or respond. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being open to talk about this. It can feel uncomfortable and scary. And it can feel like, well, what's going to happen? And shame and all stuff from the past. So thank you for risking with us in this. We appreciate you being here. Yeah. Well, I guess we're done, ladies.
All right. Amos, thank you for being brave enough to host this, especially with 3 women. We just give you gratitude.
Yeah, thank you.
for
This is
hosting
awesome.
Yep, mad props.
All right.
Mm.
Chat soon, everyone.